Okay. Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the fourth episode of the Summer Speaker Series, Keep It 100. My two friends, along with our sons, decided to start something similar to TED Talk, where we bring in people from the community to talk about athletics and certain aspects of life. This series airs on Zoom every Sunday at 7 p.m. In this series, you will have the opportunity to rub shoulders with giants, listen to their life stories and their journey to get to where they are now. As the audience, you'll be muted, but you will be able to ask questions in the chat about each guest that we have. Our chat monitors tonight will bring up your questions throughout the talk. Audience, in the chat, if you could please let us know who you are, where you're from, and how you heard about our program. We love to welcome you. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on our show, please contact one of us. We have organized our time in sections to start out with learning about our speakers' growing up years, their educational training background, and their years in their career. I just want to take a moment to introduce the interviewers and chat monitors tonight. The two interviewers tonight will be Devin Coleman and Sebastian Rosica. The audience monitors will be Wilson Ramos, John Ramos, and Reggie Coleman. This week's speaker is Mr. Jim Challender. Our Keep It 100 team in the audience are so glad you could take the time to join us this Sunday night. This program started out in hopes that we in the audience could have the distinct opportunity to rub shoulders with some giants and learn from them so that we can be better leaders and people in our communities and respective callings to our lives. I would like to just share a short bio of our speaker tonight. Captain Jim Challender was born in North Trenton and grew up wanting to be a state trooper. After he graduated from Trenton Catholic Boys High School in the late 50s, he enlisted in the Marines because he wasn't ready for college, but later earned a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and psychology, graduating cum laude from College of New Jersey, and then did a master's certification in public administration at Rutgers University. In the Marines, he found himself stationed in Rhode Island near Newport, where President Kennedy had a retreat home nicknamed the Summer White House. Challender was on the detail assigned to protect President John F. Kennedy and his family. He and the president became friends during this time. In addition, Mr. Challender served with Walter Boomer, Assistant Commandant of the Marine Corps. Boomer and Challender served together in Cuba during the Bay of Pigs and the Cuban Missile Crisis. In Operation Desert Storm, Boomer led all Marine forces in retaking of Kuwait from Saddam Hussein, while Challender was training Kuwait Royal Princess's police authorities who assisted Commandant Boomer in Kuwait. Challender left the Marine Corps full-time by October 1963, though he stayed involved with the Corps for 27 years. He was working with his father on Broad Street near Switlick Park a month later when Nancy, his wife, drove up and said, "Your friend got killed." And that's how he found out about President Kennedy's assassination. In 1964, Challender joined the New Jersey State Police, quickly rising to detective, carrying a great record for rock-solid honesty. Up to the point in his life, Challender said he never met anyone who was crooked. His father, a top-level man of honesty, truthfulness, character. Trenton Catholic Police, they were honorable men. The Marines he served with, and the president, friend he protected, good men. During his time at State Police, he arrested many high-profile criminals, managed to stand firm against the mob, political corruption that went as high as the New Jersey governor's office. Unfortunately, he did not always find the support from his superiors, who at times wanted him to push things under the rug or hide them because of the political pressure. He received demotions, political pressure, phone threats, and alike, but he stood firm and brought to light various areas of corruption and continued to be elevated to higher positions within the state police. By 1988, he had been made captain and was named commandant of 2 state police academies, where integrity training was a part of the drill. He retired from the state police at a young age of 50 years old. After the state police, Captain Challender served as a chief of police of the Waterfront and Airport Commission of New York and New Jersey and chief of investigation for the state of New Jersey and the city of New York. I know this only touches the surface of all you have accomplished, Captain, in your career, and we haven't even touched on all the work you have done to help individuals and their family life and varied careers, as well as giving back to your community, including a program such as ours that you started at the College of New Jersey, specifically geared to helping inner city collegiate students. Captain Chandler, we want to welcome you and thank you for taking the time with us this evening with our Keep It 100 team and our audience tonight.
Tony, it is my honor to be able to speak to you and your staff tonight and to anybody that's interested in my career and how I formed my character and family. And I've had a great life, and I thank Almighty God for all the blessings that He has given me.
Great, thank you, Captain. We appreciate that. So tonight I would like to start out by asking you if you could share a little bit about your growing up years, where you grew up, and what was it like during those times?
Fortunately, for people my age that grew up in the late 40s and 50s, we grew up at the best time in the last century. Great people, great families, great parents, great neighborhoods. I grew up in North Trenton, which was predominantly a Polish neighborhood. My mother was half Polish, so we lived on a street called Indiana Avenue. And I attended St. Hedwig's Grammar School, which was on Holden Avenue. Then from there, I went to Trenton Catholic Boys High School. Everything in those days was a lot more peaceful than it is today. And there was more, I thought, more love and attention paid to others in the community.
Well, thank you, Captain. So I want to ask, Devin Coleman, do you have a question for Captain?
Yes, I do. Captain, can you share key events in your early life that helped to shape who you are today?
Well, I like to think that my character was formed by my parents, who were very loving and very attentive to my needs, and they always spoke well of everyone, and they never really cast negative aspersions on anyone. And they just tried to teach me that everybody was a creature of Almighty God, and that I should respect them and care for them. And plus, I had the clergy, the priests, and the nuns that taught me at St. Hedwig's and at Trenton Catholic Boys High School. And the priests that taught me at Trenton Catholic, these were all veterans of World War II, real men, paratroopers, Marines that were in the invasion of Iwo Jima and Normandy and the Battle of the Bulge. So I was dealing with real men that could talk to us in real terms. And they always set a high standard of character for all the students at Trenton Catholic Boys High School. And the Christian principles of love that Jesus Christ espoused.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sebastian, do you have a question for the Captain?
Yes, so I can tell you have a very strong belief in Christ, which is very good. Did you have that strong of a belief when you were younger, or as you got older?
No, I've always had it since I can remember, and I don't know, it wasn't brought out, but I am an ordained deacon in the Catholic Church, permanent deacon. I work at Our Lady of Sorrows, St. Anthony's Parish.
You got it wrong ear.
My ministry is hospital. I even done prison ministry, nursing homes, And I try to help out the sick and suffering, the inner city kids. So I've always been a follower of Jesus.
Great, thank you, Captain. Wilson, do we have any questions from the audience?
Yes, but first I would like to know, first of all, I want to say thank you for share your bio. It's really amazing. Thank you one more time. I have my question. What sport you practice during like middle school and high school?
Where I went to grammar school. In those days, it was from 1 to 8. And high school, did you say sports?
Yeah, what
Yes.
sports did you play during your growing up?
Basketball and soccer.
Thank
Any
you.
follow-up question, Wilson?
In what position you play on the field playing soccer?
Oh, that's in those days they called it. I think it was outside right. I don't know what you call it today, but that's what they called the line back in those days. You remember the terminology? Did you ever use that terminology today?
Yes, they've gone back to that terminology. They went to right midfielder, but now they've gone back outside right, outside left. So
I played outside right, and the biggest experience that I ever had is when Trenton Catholic, who did quite well in the city, went and played a school called Petty. I don't know if you're familiar with Petty.
Yeah.
And they had a lot of young Spanish kids up playing up there on scholarship, and I've never seen kids so quick in my life. So I remember that experience. I think we lost like 8-0, which is a real shellacking in soccer. But we got better, and the city kids were able to compete with them later on. So I enjoyed it. But back in those days in North Trenton, all you had were soccer fields by Princeton Avenue, Olden Avenue, St. Michael's Church. It was all Polish and Eastern European soccer players.
nice.
Thank you.
John, do you have a question yourself or from the audience?
He's muted.
Hold on.
All right, thank you.
Okay, John.
Did you have an experience as a kid that made you want to go become a Marine or go into law enforcement?
Very good question. I tried to ask myself that question many times. What caused me to feel that way? And I guess it was, again, back to a structure of well-meaning, well-cultured, strong character people that I met that had been in the Marines and that had been in the state police, which caused me to want to emulate these gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, Reggie, do you have a question yourself or from the audience?
He's muted.
Okay. Oh, you guys are getting muted.
Yeah, I apologize, Tony. I got knocked out. When I came back in, I was muted.
Okay.
There was questions in the chat before I got knocked out. I don't know if the guys asked those questions or not, but I don't see them on my screen. So I'll just ask the captain. Captain, could you talk a little bit more about growing up in North Trenton and what life was like in the city back when you grew up?
As I stated before, I grew up in the best years in the last century. The 50s and the late 40s, 50s, and early 60s were great times. The economy was prosperous. People, mother and fathers all had jobs. You weren't rich, but you all always had good food on the table. You had good neighbors, regardless of whatever their ethnicity was. And they all were struggling, middle class, lower middle class people trying to make a living and raise their children and get their children educated so that they could be one step better than they were and to give us what they didn't have. So that was the goal of our parents and the parents of most of the children that I hung around with. And I'm glad to say that a lot of my peers achieved outstanding professions in life.
Thank you.
All right, Captain, as we transition to your training years in the military, just had an initial question. When you decided to go in the military, why did you choose to go into the Marines?
Again, Tony, it had to do with some adults in my neighborhood and men that were former Marines, and the way they acted and the way they carried themselves, the way they were men of integrity and of honesty and physical fitness. So I said, that's what I want to be.
Gotcha. Okay. Devin?
How was the training like in the Marines?
Well, it was tough. It was really an experience. And I can remember arriving at Paris, South Carolina, and the training started, and the worst thing that could ever happen to me happened within 2 or 3 days. When I was down there, I got a call from the drill instructors, and I won't tell you what they called me, but I had to go to their room and pound on the door and request permission, and they said, there's a lady on the phone that says she's your mother. What is your mother doing calling you down here at Parris Island, South Carolina? So I had to answer the call, and I was in deep duty for about a week. So my mother never called me again, but that's how my mother cared for me. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
The training, but we did a lot of physical training, a lot of military drills and hand-to-hand combat and rifle range, and a lot of discipline and honor and integrity. They try to make you a man physically fit, a man of honor, so that you could defend yourself and defend the United States.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sebastian, do you have a question?
Yeah. So could you talk a little bit about your relationships with, I can say, fellow soldiers when you were in the Marines? Because we've had other people on here, and they've told us that they've had such strong, long-lasting relationships with their fellow comrades. Could you explain your experience with that?
Yes, I still have long-term relationships with some of the men that I served with, some who were my commanding officers. Some were lieutenant. I was an enlisted man. I attained the rank of sergeant. But one thing I'm proud of, I had a company commander who was a hero in Korea, and I served under him for almost 3 years. He passed away maybe 2 years ago, and 2 of the former young lieutenants who rose to the rank of full colonel in the Marine Corps and later retired, they went out to bury the captain out in Camp Pendleton, California. And when they gave the eulogies at his funeral, I've never heard of anything like this before. They sent me copies of it. Both of the lieutenants, who were then colonels, retired colonels, they spoke about his leadership and how he imparted such values of integrity and honesty to the men that he commanded. And they talked about me in specific. They talked about Sergeant Challender, who later on became an executive in law enforcement, and what he did to expose corruption and stayed strong in his courage and his character. And they attributed a lot to what our captain used to teach us. How's that?
Good.
I have copies of those 2 eulogies. I was shocked when I received them.
Hmm.
Okay, great. Mr. Ramos, Wilson, you have a question for yourself or the audience?
I have one question. I have my nephew. He's right now in the Army. So usually parents, when the kids, they want to go to the Army, to the Navy, they always say, no, you have to think about it. what will be your advice to the kids who wanna go to the Marines or the Army?
If I were advising my son to go to a military service, advise him to go to the Air Force or the Navy, because I think that when you leave the Air Force and the Navy, you, in most cases, have a good technical skill that you can fall back on in civilian life. Most of the people that go into the Marine Corps, they wind up in law enforcement, but that's what I wanted at that time. So, no, they're all great. They're great people. Army, Navy, Coast Guard, Air Force, Marine Corps. Each has its own little twist to it, and I would encourage military service rather than just roam around the streets and try to go from job to job, because you can get some great training and some great education and some great benefits. Does that make any sense?
Thank you. Yep.
Okay, John.
Thank you.
Yeah. Someone in the chat asked, who pressured you while at the state police? And if it were police authorities, how did you move up in rank?
It was a unique situation. When I went on to the state police, my goal was to become a detective. And I worked very, very hard. It took every case that I could work on, and it was unheard of that a man back in the days when I was a young trooper that with less than 3 years in uniform was promoted to division headquarters. That was the top criminal investigation section in the state police. I made it in less than 3 years to become a detective. And the motivation for that is that I worked with some great people, and they, like I said, I was always told, find the sharpest guy that you can find and emulate him, which I did. And I learned so much in my career as a detective. But I got myself in trouble, I guess, by being too scrupulous and too honest, because I was the first detective ever assigned to the Federal Strike Force up in Newark, and I was doing a major investigation in labor racketeering. And in the case of this investigation, I came across a check for $5,000 made out to the Cahill campaign. The Cahill campaign was Governor Cahill. And that in itself is not a crime or anything. And until I sat down and I talked to the head of the strike force, and he said, Jimmy, I said, what, sir? He said, look on the back of that check. And I looked on the back of the check, and guess where the check was cashed? It was cashed at the pari-mutuel window of the Garden State Racetrack. And that led to a major, major investigation that I performed. And when my superiors first heard about it, they were ecstatic that I had done such a good job. And on the Friday, when I found the check, I went to the racetrack to talk to a state police detective who was assigned there at Garden State Racetrack. I showed him the check, and I said, who are these initials on the back of the check? And he said, the RM stands for Riggs Mahoney. He's the head of the pari-mutuel window, pari-mutuel section. And that JM, that stands for Joe McCrane, who is now the Secretary of the Treasury for the state of New Jersey. Uh-oh. First I thought I had someone with pilfering the checks from the campaign. Brought it back to my superiors, made all the reports out, and there was some information that I still needed. So a couple of days later, I went back to the track and I talked to the detective that I had originally showed the check to. And when I said, that check, George, that I should, when he went, what check? I knew I had problems. It's like I had never met him and never seen him. So after that, I knew I was working at a hot potato. Make a long story short, there was massive corruption in campaign financing for governor. And I gave it to my superiors, and they didn't move on it for a while. And they were asking questions all the time, and I was getting blown off. And I guess I didn't make them too happy, because the next couple of months, I was transferred from the state police major crime unit, which was to the New Jersey Turnpike Detective Bureau, which was like from the Nottingham Little, from the New York Yankees to the Nottingham Little League. That's what a slap in the face it was. But after being out on the turnpike for 2 weeks, I wound up arresting a very major fugitive, and I became a hero by accident. So they had to leave me alone on two premises, on the corruption and the big arrest that I had made for this fugitive. But it was bothering me, and I came home one day, and they had Watergate testimony on TV, and I saw John Dean testifying. And I said, that's going to be me if I don't do more about that case that I had investigated. So I went to the United States Attorney in Newark. His name was Herb Stern, a great man. Gave him all the information, and he wound up indicting everybody. And he told the governor and the New Jersey Attorney General, you can't talk to Challender without my permission. They call it harassment. He said, and if you bother him, I'm going to indict you all for obstructing justice. So I had the right people on my side. And this went on for a couple of years. My wife and I were on TV every day. That was a big deal. Okay? That's close enough?
Captain, your volume's going a little bit down, but I think we can still hear you.
Okay, I'm trying to talk.
You got to get your Marine voice on.
Effective Zoom thing now.
Okay. Reggie, any questions from you or the audience?
Yes, yes, we have a question from MR in the audience. MR's question is, what are the major life lessons you have learned during your military service that you have shared with your kids?
They might think it's discipline.
Okay.
And his son's on the call. He can support that. So discipline, and go ahead.
Just to try to do everything right and honest and integrity and hard work. My kids all made me proud. They did well. My wife and I, we're the parents of 4 children. Unfortunately, I and my wife experienced the worst pain you can. We lost one of our children about 4 years ago. Both children get cancer. But my one son is a graduate of the United States Naval Academy. He's a colonel. My one daughter is a medical doctor. My other son is an energy specialist, all-state athlete. He went to college on a football scholarship, and guess who his teammates were? Mike Tomlin from the Pittsburgh Steelers and Sean McDermott from the Buffalo Bills. So he did well, and he's doing well. And we lost our daughter, she was involved in special education studying. But that's a scar in your heart that you never get rid of. Hope you understand.
Sorry for your loss. Thank you for sharing.
Captain, I have, as we transition a little more into your, I know we've kind of started touching base on your career in the state police, but it's telling the courage that you had to stand up against the mob, the political powers that be, and even superiors that were above you. I mean, where did your courage come from? And, it's nowadays kids, it takes a lot. They have to have courage in a lot of situations. If you would speak to kids today, what would you tell them about that? To stand up against the tide? How would you advise them?
Well, I would tell them to go to the mirror and look in the mirror. And there's an old poem that I learned from my son at the Naval Academy, and it's called "The Man in the Glass." And it's basically, the conclusion goes, when you get what you want in your struggle for gain, and the world makes you king for a day, just go to the mirror and see what the man or woman has to say. It's not mother, brother, or father upon whose verdict you must pass, but the one counting most is the one staring back from the glass. you can't kill your conscience. That's my feeling. Some people prove me wrong, but I know if you were raised properly and had great parents and great relatives and good teachers, your character is formed. Once your character is formed, you got to reach down inside yourself and sometimes pull yourself together, because life is tough. But always make sure that you don't make stupid judgments or decisions. Before I did what I did, I made sure all my bases were covered, that I had done everything correctly, that they couldn't find anything to get, to try and frame me up on, so to speak. And they tried very hard. And finally, when the administration was changed, the new governor ordered an investigation of the Challender affair, as they called it, and new Attorney General and the Director of Criminal Justice did an investigation, and they said Challender was 100% correct, and that his superiors were myopic, meaning they didn't know what, they were too nearsighted to see. That was a polite way of saying that they covered it up, but we're not going to prosecute them for it. And they gave me the opportunity to select any position, job, any assignment that I wanted in the state police. And how's this one? No one in the state police has one of these. I have a special award by the New Jersey Senate, the resolution, which certifies me as being 100% honest and truthful. Great little plaque to read someday. But what I went through was very tough.
And that was 100% honest and what?
A man of honesty and integrity and truthfulness. You should see this plaque. I'll show you.
Love to see that.
Yeah, the only one ever got one of those. How about that? I'm certified honest.
That's great. That's great. That's amazing. I mean, to stand the way you did is just a testimony to us and to the young people here. This is a great example to us all. Devin, you have a question for the captain?
Yes, I do. Who are some key people that helped shape you, and what did you learn from them?
Well, my parents first and foremost, and my coaches and teachers and clergy. They were the ones that helped me and my neighbors and my friends and some of the kids I grew up with were great people. So they all helped form my character. And again, it's my religion that really helped me.
Thank you.
Sebastian?
So, you were in the Marines, you became a state police detective, you arrested many high-profile criminals. What do you think out of all of those, big experiences, what do you feel is like the most impactful? And it can also go back to your childhood being in school in Trenton and like being in such a great community. Like, what do you think out of all those points in your life probably was the most impactful?
Well, the two things that I remember the most were the big corruption case that I handled. And when I told you before, I arrested a very prominent fugitive after I was transferred to the turnpike after 2 weeks in the middle of the night. That fugitive, you may see her on television now and then. That's Joanne Chesimard. Does that name ring a bell? The girl that's in Cuba. They're killing a New Jersey. They're killing a New Jersey state trooper. I arrested her and prosecuted her. But they're the two cases that I remember the most. But I did a lot of work in narcotics, labor racketeering, organized crime. It's amazing when I look back at my life, all the things that happened, and all the hours that I spent away from my family in the middle of the night, getting calls. Back then, my daughter Terry, she reminds me she could hear me getting phone calls in the middle of the night, sometimes using language that was not very appropriate for children to hear. But 2 o'clock in the morning getting called out every other night to see you. But that's about the summary of the 2 cases that I really am proud of.
Thank you.
Wilson, do you have a question or from yourself or the audience?
Yes, for the audience, I have Steve. Hold on. Oh yeah. Any personal revelations about the President Kennedy?
Well, he was quite a guy. One night I was in charge of guarding Air Force One at the Quonset Naval Air Station in Rhode Island, which was right across from where he would go to Jackie O's family. Would be called the Hammersmith Farm. That was a very, ostentatious, pretty place in Newport, Rhode Island. And we would take him over either by launch or by helicopter to the estate. And one night I was there at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm up in the plane, and I go to his desk, and I'm sitting down there reading the newspaper and eating some of the candy. And I hear somebody coming on the plane, coming down the plane, and I thought it was one of the Air Force guys. And as I look up over the paper, who is it but President Kennedy? And he said, Sergeant, do you like my candy and my newspapers? And I said, yes, sir. He said, I'm going to the back of the plane to go to the crypto room. Back in those days, we didn't have such sophisticated electronic devices to communicate top secret information. But in the back of the Air Force One was a special room that had high level electronics and all. And I was like talking to myself. I didn't know what to do. He said, sit down, relax. He said, let me know what kind of candy you want me to get you if you don't like this stuff. He said, you're here guarding my plane, taking care of me. But that was one instance. Another instance, we had an inspection for the press, and we had all the Marines in the unit lined up in our dress blues. And I, being the sergeant, was the first guy that the president came up to. And I came up to inspection arms, and it was an M1 rifle, and you're supposed to drive the bolt back and come back to the erect position. But somebody had sabotaged my rifle, and the bolt was already back. So I'm standing there, I got the rifle, I'm ready to drive the bolt back, and ready to back position. So I come back to an erect position, and President Kennedy goes, surprise, Sergeant Jim. I go, yes, sir. And he laughed and sort of turned to the major, and he said, Sergeant Jim doesn't have any problem, does he, Major? No, sir. And he kept on walking. He was letting the major know not to bust my chop. And I talked to him on different occasions when we were riding back and forth over to the Hammersmith Farm. Great guy, very personable, very caring. Would ask about your family and everything. I even took this lady to my left up there once on the plane in the middle of the night. Nancy. But anyway, I hope that answered your question.
John?
Yeah. Someone in the audience asked, what advice would you give to the youth who are on the fence about joining the Army?
I heard what advice I would give to the youth on what?
Who are on the fence about joining the Army?
Again, I'm in favor of military service. And, I would encourage them to go in the Army. You make a career, you can learn things. It's a good organization. How can I say anything wrong? My son retired as a colonel from the Army, so Army Reserve. So I'll stand up for the Army. But when it comes to the Army-Navy game, I go Navy, beat Army.
Okay, Reggie?
Yes, Steve has a question from the audience. He wants to know, why did you leave the state police at the age of 50?
Yeah, I want to.
At 50, and have you ever used your gun or ever been threatened?
I could have, we'll get to the gun part first. Yeah, I've been threatened, but yeah, I've had my gun out. There are times that I could have legally killed 2 or 3 different people, but I didn't do it because I knew there was another way to handle it. And whenever I looked into the face of someone that I could have killed, mostly were young people, I saw my own children there, their face upon these perpetrators, because I said somewhere along the line these people were misguided, and I knew that my safety was not in that jeopardy, as it, you know, that where I could take their life. But legally, I could have taken their life. Back in the days when I was a trooper, we were more into using non-lethal force than we were lethal force. And to be very honest with you, we carried with us what we called a baton. It was made out of ash or oak, and it was about 4.5 feet long, and it had a big rubber, a rawhide wrapped around the handle and everything. And there were a few times when people threatened me with an edged weapon, a knife or a hatchet or something like that, where I could have shot them. But what I did was I whacked them across the elbow or the knee with the baton. And that sent more pain in their body than they really wanted to experience. And I didn't have to, to use lethal force. And there were all kind of incidents. And one I think you'll get a kick out of. We got a call of an insane man running around a town in Atlantic County called Egg Harbor. You may go through it when you go down to the casino. It's a little town just east of Hamilton. And we got there, and there was this fellow totally out of his mind. And it wasn't on meth or anything. They didn't have those kind of drugs back in those days. So myself and another trooper, senior trooper, finally wrestled the guy to the ground, and we were able to get handcuffs on this naked man. Back in those days, I don't know if it's still in operation, there was a state mental hospital right down the road there, maybe 10 miles, called Ancora. And we took this insane man, handcuffed naked, to Ancora Hospital. We went into the receiving area, and there were a couple of psychiatrists there. We walked in, and we told him they could see that he was bizarre. His behavior was bizarre, and he was frothing at the mouth and everything. And one of the new psychiatrists start lacing into me and the other trooper, saying, "What are you doing putting handcuffs on this man?" And back in those days, we didn't have straitjackets. "Take those handcuffs off him immediately." So guess what I did? I took the handcuffs off this naked man, and guess where the naked man was? To the throat of the psychiatrist. And he started to choke him, and I was reacting to try and pull him off the psychiatrist, and the senior man grabbed my arm for a minute and he said, "Wait a second, James. We wanted to teach this doctor a little lesson," and then the doctor screamed, "Get the handcuffs, put the handcuffs on him." So these are just some of the small stories I remember. How some people was reacting. You were trying to do the right thing, but you could only do so many things right. So, does that help you?
I hope so. I think we answered the question. And I'm sorry, did you respond to why you retired at 50 from the state?
Oh, okay. I retired at 50. Back when I went into state police, we didn't pay Social Security. And to collect Medicare at age 65, you have to have so many Social Security quarters, 40. The only Social Security quarters that I had on my record was the time I served in the Marine Corps, the year that I worked for my father. So I had to get out and get a job where I could pay into Social Security so that when I reached the age of 65, I would have Medicare. And plus, I had a great opportunity to become chief of police up in the New York and New Jersey Waterfront Airport Commission in New York City. So I had kids in school and college, and I had to help pay for their needs, and that's how that happened.
Thanks. Tony, we have one more question that just came in before we move on. You mind if I ask that?
Of course.
So, Captain, you talked about, it sounds like your experience and maybe the training you had kept you from using your gun on at least 3 occasions when you could have. There's a question from Carlos in the audience that would like you to talk about what police brutality was like back when you were in service.
When I was on the road and working as a detective, we had some high standards in the state police at that time. There were not that many incidents that I knew firsthand or even secondhand where people were abused. In fact, towards the end of my career, when I was commandant of the academy, I instituted a program for self-defense in a non-lethal way, because we had a couple of troopers that were starting to shoot their guns a little too quickly. I wasn't second guessing them, but I wanted to give them confidence in their ability to defend themselves. So I put together a 40-hour course on self-defense where we went over the mixed martial arts and different takedown techniques and ways to bring people under control. Towards the end of my career, they were becoming a little more free with the weapon, and I didn't like it, and the colonel didn't like it, so we instituted a program, and conjoined with that program of self-defense, using non-lethal force. I put together a program called Police Professionalism and Cultural Diversity, which was a unique program because it was moderated by my staff, but guess who taught the blocks of instruction?
Who's that?
The minority people, the people of different faiths, LGBT, the homosexuals, the minorities, the African Americans, the Spanish, whatever minority group, the Hasidic Jews, everything that we had in New Jersey, I found a sampling and brought them in to teach this mandatory 2-day course so the troopers could appreciate what it feels like when you're a black male or a Spanish male in the inner city, how to react without hurting somebody beyond necessity. And I was into all of that. And I'll tell you one other little story I'm very proud of. She's sitting right here. When I was commandant of the academy, we had a class with 112th class. I believe there were 6 African Americans in the class. And I just started the training, and the colonel called me on the phone. He said, "Jimmy, we got problems." I said, "What?" He said, "The ACLU and the
NAACP, I think you told me.
Yeah, that's what it was at that time. Yep. They're complaining that you're going to get rid of the African American males because they can't swim. You're not going to be able to get them to swim, qualify as a swimmer." I said, "Okay, Colonel, we'll take care of it." Well, guess what? Instead of using my burly instructors that were already intimidating the African American recruits, and 2 of whom played in the NFL, for the one for the San Diego Chargers and the other one for Broncos, I came up with a program. I brought in a professional swimming instructor who taught at the college and everything to teach these young men how to swim. And I figured this female instructor was very good and she could teach them how to swim. I'll make a long story short. When they graduated, the colonel called the NAACP and the ACLU and said, "We didn't dismiss the African American recruits. They passed their swimming. My instructors taught them how to swim." He did it in a somewhat facetious manner. But guess who that's a guest, or what do they call him now, masked swimming instructor? Guess who that was? My wife, Nancy. I was in for keeping it in the house. I brought her down to the academy, and she would work with these recruits for weeks and finally taught them all how to swim, and they qualified. So these are just little stories that if your heart is in the right place and your soul is in the right place, you get things done and you don't have any problems with mistreating people.
Great. Thanks, Captain. Any other questions from the audience, guys?
That's it for now.
All right, so we have time to ask some other questions. So I'm just going to give chance to the team to ask questions. I'll ask one to start. Captain, you've met a number of very influential people in your life and that have done some major things in this country, including even the president of our country, JFK. But who are some influential people what would be the top 3 influential people in your life, and not in your life, people that you never met that you wish you had? And why?
Just in a little aside, I'll answer your question, Tony, but let me preface it with, you'll never guess who I met at a Christmas party. A beautiful woman. She had The Beast, the movie, and she was in the Terminator. You know who that was?
No, who was it?
Linda Hamilton.
Wow.
Remember her?
Yeah.
All right. Well, she stood with Schwarzenegger in all those fancy movies. So I was at a Christmas party with her. And when we were leaving, I gave her a hug and all. And I said, how do I compare to Arnold? She says, Captain Jim, you're a real man. And about 2 weeks later, I get this package in the mail, and it's a photograph from her with inscribed, Dear Captain Jim, I'll never be the same after embracing a real man like you. All my instructors and all, they all swore that I went out and bought the photograph in the frame and signed it myself. But you really did send me that picture. How's that for meeting
we want to know what Nancy has to say about that.
Another person that I was friendly with, Nancy and I had a drink with him the night before Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. Norman Schwartz, General Schwarzkopf, knew him, and he would come to the graduations at the State Police Academy. He was in charge of Central Command. But someone that I wish I had met, a hero from World War II, I would have liked to have met Father Vincent Capodanno, Father Damien, a leper priest, and yeah. Those are 2 people that really stick out in my mind. I can't come up with a third one.
And what was it about them?
Just their heroic love for their fellow human beings and the bravery and the courage. Father Capodanno is a kid from Staten Island that became a priest and received the Congressional Medal of Honor. He laid his body in front of 6 wounded Marines and received about 15 machine gun bullets from the Viet Cong, or the North Vietnamese Army. And Father Damien, who went to the Hawaiian Islands, I read a lot about him, and he worked with the leopards and wound up catching leprosy himself and dying. He became a saint. But these are the kind of people that, 2 people that I remember as my heroes.
Okay. Wow. Devin, then Sebastian.
Is there something that you have done differently in life, and what would that be, if so?
To answer that, I don't think I would change a thing. I really don't. I just think that I was fortunate. I had guidance of the Holy Spirit, good people in my life, good family, good teachers, good friends, good colleagues. I can't ask for a better life. I've been blessed. I enjoyed every minute of it.
Something we wish we can all say when time comes. Sebastian.
You can make it happen. You determine when you wake up in the morning and you look in the mirror, you establish your own attitude for that day. And that's what I tried to do. I've had some bad days, but all in all, the bad days become so obscure in your mind because of the many good things that have happened. And, We just move on, and I'm just so happy when I wake up and I look in the mirror at 79 years of age, and I don't have any regrets, and I'm proud of what I did. I'm proud of how I treated people. I didn't abuse anybody. How's that one for a statement as a law enforcement officer? Not one person in my life that I abused while I arrested. There were times I had to use some force, but I never used force beyond the necessary to effect an arrest. So I look in the mirror and I say, Challender, you did the right thing. You didn't have to prove you were tough, or you didn't have to beat people up. And I find it appalling, and I find it so disheartening to see other people in law enforcement behave the way they do. And like I see a lot of these young kids today, I'll see them, and I don't like the way they're behaving, both municipal and sometimes the few state troopers. And I tell them, that's not the way you should look, or the way you should talk to people. And they look at me and I go, yeah, I locked up more people by accident than you've done on purpose. You've got to behave yourself, and you've got to be a professional. That's the way I led my life, and I'm proud of it. Hope you can.
Thank you.
Hope you can feel the strength of my feelings when I issue.
We feel it, and we hope others do too. And I know there's a number of them that do. So, Sebastian?
I honestly don't have any questions. He's been very descriptive about pretty much everything. It's very interesting to hear about, all these, crazy, but not like in a bad way crazy life experiences. Like, it's very interesting. You're able to meet very famous, influential people, experience things that people would ask you about because they're so interested to experience what you've done. We've done a lot of different things, so I don't have any questions, to be honest.
Tony, can I interject something here?
Sure, Captain.
Which hasn't been mentioned. One of the things I'm extremely proud of is that for many years I was an officer in the Sunshine Foundation. I don't know if you young people know what that is. That's the foundation, the original foundation that takes care of sick and terminally ill children. I was the volunteer fundraiser for the Sunshine Foundation, and I raised millions of dollars from various generous people in Mercer County, the state of New Jersey, all over the country, that we could help these poor and sick children. We would take them to Disney World. We built a village down there, the Dream Village, right outside of Disney World. And there's a big plaque in the ground there with my name on it for all the work that I did for the Sunshine Foundation, helping those kids. And I'm proud of that, doing a Christian charity. Proudest of is working with Father Brian McCormick, the ghetto priest. I don't know if you ever heard of him, or you ever heard of Martin House, or Better Community Housing of Trenton. On weekends, many weekends for many years, I would work in the inner city, rebuilding and remodeling homes for the people in the inner city with Father Brian. So that was just some of the stuff I did part-time, and I'm proud of it, because that helped me focus my regular job as to how to treat people, because I could see the other side of it.
Mm. That's key. I mean, seeing the other side and you volunteering, I think that's amazing. Just that alone, I think, would make a difference.
Days and hours, Tony, we put in a lot of good people. Not just professionals, but a lot of good people in that. In fact, they help form like that. People that do charitable work.
Wilson, John, Reggie, do you have any one more question?
Sure. Actually, I was going to ask the question about maybe one of Captain's most proudest moments, but you just kind of told us about that. So I would just say, is there an opportunity for you, just as you're talking to our audience today, to talk to some current leadership in law enforcement? I mean, you talked about your training and some of the things that you did when you were in law enforcement that might have saved some lives. It just seems like, I wonder if there's an opportunity for you to speak to leadership and others like you to share some of your experiences for today's officers in law enforcement.
Believe it or not, you hit on a good point. I speak to officers in the state police a couple of times a week. I've been called by the academy staff for advice on different issues. And you couldn't have better people in the command staff of the state police than you have today. One of them being a detective. I call him a below average detective. His name is Mike Rossica. He's related to another kid called Brett Hogan. And I talked to the superintendent 2 or 3 times a week, Colonel Pat Callahan. Great man. You see him on TV at the COVID briefings with the governor. And I'll let Pat know. In fact, I told him tonight I'm coming on the show. And I won't need makeup like he needs when he goes on TV. I'm good looking, and he's got a lovely wife and family. But no, he talks to me, and we exchange issues, and his heart is in the right place. He's doing all the right things, and you couldn't have better leadership than you have right now in the state police. And I'm proud of the men, and the women. Super, great job. So my hat is off to them. As I tell you, Tony, your mom and dad did a good job raising you 2 boys. Okay?
Thank you, Captain. Devin, John, anything else?
Yeah, someone, last minute question from the audience. Someone asked, how should they teach law enforcement so that current officers can have your attitude?
It's done through the training. They try, believe it or not. They have many areas of instruction dealing with demeanor and character and how to behave and interaction with other human beings, interpersonal relationships. The key problem in law enforcement today is not necessarily the training. The problem starts at the beginning, the selection process. That is where the officers that do things like you've seen on TV, like kneeling on that man's neck and different things like that. That could have been, I bet you that was spotted somewhere in his initial background investigation before he came on the, what was that police department out there where this happened? Minneapolis, right? There are so many of these police officers that have been gotten in trouble today that their character flaws would have been discovered in a good background investigation. But I also know sometimes in background investigations, the investigator does find out things that are unorthodox and aberrations in a person's personality, and they disclose them to higher authority. And sometimes there's higher authority outside their organization politically that tells these police departments that they are to hire them. That's where the problem lies, in the selection process. And sometimes with political interference in putting these recruits on a police department. Does that help you any?
Yeah, thank you.
Devin, Wilson?
We're fine. I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm fine. I don't have any more.
Okay. Well, Captain, is there anything you would like to close with us to the young people and kind of advising them in life of how they should, could be successful and should live their lives?
I think they've heard all of that. And what I would like to say is I wanted to congratulate you 3 gentlemen on your efforts to try and get the message across. And I heard such good things about the speakers that you had on before, Coach Bass and other people that you had. I looked at their videos, and they're outstanding young men. And these people know where they're going. It's just a matter of having that little extra guidance by people like yourself, Tony, and Reggie. And the Boys Club of Trenton is so important to provide some leadership and caring for these children, that they have a place to go. And
Thank you, Captain.
you can't do enough, I'm telling you, because I'm also on the board of directors of the Mercer County Special Services, Special School that deals with incorrigible young people from the city. And we meet all the time, and Dr. We talk about how we can help these kids, and but the Boys Club is a very, very important aspect of the community. So do as much as you can to get support, and if you can't reach some of the poor, lost souls kids in the inner city, nobody will reach them because they really don't know what they're doing. A lot of these people, a lot of it is all political motivation, what makes them look good in the paper and all. But they don't have, in my opinion, a truly sincere place in their heart to reach these kids. Because I have seen kids reach that you were so hard you'd think you'd never be able to turn it around, but we did over our careers in the community, and it's a shame. I feel so bad for these kids because they're born with 3 strikes against them. And, unless we, meaning you guys and myself, and I still get involved in cases as a deacon to help families out with kids that are incorrigible and they need some guidance. They have to feel loved. I mean, we're back to square one. Love. Jesus Christ, the symbol of love. And if you don't have that in your heart, pack up your bag and your gym bag and go home, because you're wasting your time. You're wasting your time with children. But you guys are on the right through the music. Keep up the good work. You know, when I give homilies at funerals as a deacon, I buried a lot of people. And there were a lot of people that I buried that were so charitable in their lifetime and helped out so many people that I had to bring in their help in the community. And I would, in my homily, I would say, when Johnny went to heaven and he was standing with the Lord, as he walked into heaven, the Lord was standing there with a bunch of people around him. And the Lord would say to Johnny, I want you to meet some friends of yours. And Johnny would say, Lord, I don't know these people. And the Lord would say, yes, Johnny, you know them. They know you. You help them. They were poor souls on earth. So come in and sit down and have a cup of coffee with them. They remember all the hard work you did for them when you were on the planet. So these are the kind of things that you got to look forward to. What the Lord said to you. And will there be people that you don't know waiting to greet you when your time is up? Makes no sense.
It does, and thank you, Captain. Really, this has been all inspiring. And I should let you know, too, that Coach Bass is actually on the call here. So he heard what you had to say as well. So we just really want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for you taking the time to be with us tonight, to share your story. I know your family members, some of them are here on the call, and we can't thank you enough for not only what you've done tonight, but what you've done for so many people. It's almost like you're an octopus with his tentacles out all over the place, and the influences you've made and the stories you've told. I mean, I've heard a lot more stories than you've shared tonight, just about the influences that you've had on people, that you took the time to help people, even in their finances, to kind of sort things out. And so we just want to thank you from our team, a Keep It 100 team, and everybody here tonight. We appreciate you taking the time. And to our audience, thank you for being a part. Thank you for asking questions. You should know that when our team, our fathers and sons were thinking about starting this program, Captain was one of the first people I called. And he told me, Tony, I started a program similar to that at the College of New Jersey, and for inner city kids who are college students. And he said that there's one of the things that I'm thankful for in my life is that I got a chance to rub some shoulders with some giants. And that's our kind of slogan. You know, Keep It 100 means keep it real. And rubbing shoulders with giants came out of what Captain had shared with us. So we're so happy that he had the chance he joined in and helped us out this week and shared his life with us. In the coming weeks, we have, next week, we have Bob Smith, who'll be joining us. He's a U.S. soccer player, played for the U.S. national team, professional, and played with Pele, one of soccer's greats. Will be joining us next week, sharing about his life and his story with us to inspire young people and families. So again, thank you, Captain. And if you want to stay on the call for a few minutes with our team, that would be great. And to the audience, thanks again. Please join us again next week. Have a good weekend and good night.
Right.
Thank you.
Nick is stay on.
How'd you like that? Good. Now
Hold on, guys. I'm just having everybody into the Captain. We can keep your family members on as well. They would like to say.
It's
Good, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for these. They're really helpful.
Yeah.
Captain, I have Tim C. and Al Dempster still on the call. Would you like to? Is Al a friend?
No, Al is married. He's lucky enough to be married to my cousin Annie.
Okay, I can keep him on the call if you like. Let me admit him. Hold 1 second. Patty T.
Tony,
Yes.
I think she's from, she left already.
Okay.
Good, huh?
Okay.
Get yourself ready.
All right. Great.
I'm gonna go then, Tony.
Okay, Cap.
I'll let you-
What's that?
I'm gonna go then. You can finish your.
Hold 1 second, Cap.